everyone, welcome to another video. I'm Sadib Kazmi and welcome to the Design and Tech Show. And today is another guest episode in which we have a product manager with us, James Marshall, and he will be joining us shortly and we will have an insightful discussion on the product management industry. Yeah, let's get into it. Welcome to the show, and so let's start with some introductions first. So just tell us about yourself and who are you and what do you do?
Okay, yeah. So my name's James Marshall. I worked at a company called IndieSpring up until very recently, until the end of October. They were a small startup. I was the fourth hire, and I came into them without any real tech background. Initially as a QA tester of all things. I then became the account manager. This led me on to experience some design, as I was using it to interpret what was being said to the developers and the development team, and that's what sort of gave me a flavor for the design side of things. As the company grew, I got more of a chance to experience larger design projects, go for the full user journeys and full solutions, rather than just being individual small changes like contact forms or header bars, for instance. And I've kind of grown with the company. So when I left, there was 25 people at IndieSpring, and I was a full-time product owner at that point. So focusing on the design phase all the way through to the delivery and making sure that what was delivered was true to the specification. And as of now, I have now just gone freelance as of the 1st of November. So all very terrifying and exciting. But this is where I am at the moment.
Perfect. So my next question is so how did your design career begin? Like what was that first time when you realized that design is my future and this is something I really want to pursue? So what was that moment when it all clicked for you?
So I'm trying to think of an actual individual moment, but I can remember, and when we were still very small, when I was doing the account management role, we had it was a contact form that we did for someone. So at that point, we were very, what's the word for it? Responsive rather than proactive. The clients would come to us with requests and work that they had, and as the account manager, I would communicate those and then ticket them up for the development team. And it was when a request came through to redo a contact form, because it was a bit old and clunky, and in order to help the developers understand it, I grabbed Axure at the time and just designed a mock-up of what this contact form could look like. And it was fun to sort of do something other than just ticket creating that was more creative. And from that, I pushed more and more to do it because I really, really enjoyed it. And I remember we did a full website design for a company called Act for Me, which unfortunately didn't complete, but that was the first chance I got to go there from start to finish. So I was there, sat alongside the client, helping with the design phase. It was very, very collaborative, which was great. And it was first real chance I've had to do that, rather than just being almost a support line. And it kind of just gave me the itch. I was determined to do more of it, so pushed for it every chance I got after that point, really. I mean, that's probably that probably is about 5.5 years ago now. No, probably about 6 years ago. So it's come along a lot since then. But I've always straddled this account manager / project manager / designer role, just from necessity of being a growing company. And I knew very early on that it was the design that I wanted to do and wanted to try and do as much as possible of, really.
Yeah. So I actually wanted to ask you this thing, what is the difference between a UX designer and a product manager such as yourself, and how did you make that transition from being a UX designer into a product manager, or the difference is not that much? So what's your take on this?
One thing I've found is that every company that I've spoke to, they have a slightly different take on what everything is, really. Unless you are a large company where you can have like a dedicated UX or design team where everyone has a very specific role of, like, say, a user researcher or a sort of like a user interface designer, a lot of the time you will get these amalgamated roles. So I know when I was working at IndieSpring that our version of UX wasn't really true UX, and it was more of a sort of, we were using best practice designs in order to come up with something that was as user friendly as possible with what we could find out. We weren't proactively speaking to customers that often. It happened occasionally, but it wasn't something we were going out of our way to do. And I know that if you're not speaking to customers, really, you're not practicing true UX. So it's that confusing sort of no man's land where you have the title and you're doing 90% of the role, but not some of the core aspects. And it seems quite common that everyone will take bits from different job descriptions in order to come up with something that meets their own business needs. For the product owner, product manager role, it was more just taking away the project management side of my role. So I was still at that point doing creating all the sort of user journeys. Well, I still did with the product owner, but creating the whole project plan and so on, and then feeding that back to the clients in that sense. This was more of a formalization that, right, you're going to be in charge of coming up with the brief and then ensuring that it's delivered to the specification. That's a very black and white summary of it. Obviously, there's a lot more in betweens of working with the teams and working with the clients, but it was more just taking away the product management side and focusing entirely on delivering the product as successfully as possible. And that was the big difference and big change, really.
Okay, so now the next question is, it's actually the primary topic of our episode, and that is the hook model. So I actually came across this term like a week back when I was reading the book Hooked. So I actually wanted to talk about this model, which is like very prevalent in our product industry. So what do you know about this model and its use and its purpose, basically?
So the hook model it's all about forming addicting behaviors. It's trying to get people to return to products and services for maybe longer than they would have intended to do otherwise, or just in order to make sure that the software is performing a lot of service for people for a longer term. My exposure to it a lot of the time comes from the game side, because I've worked with casino companies over in Vegas as well. So I know that slot machines are considered almost the epitome of a hooked model system, and I'm used to working with those. But funny enough, with them, it was a slightly different approach. I mean, no, I'll come back to that in a second, because obviously the hook model is the important part of this one. So with the hook model, there's four aspects to it. There's the trigger of what it is that you want to achieve, the action, what it is that you're going to do to actually achieve these goals, the reward, what you get for doing it, and then the investment, which is the stored value, which is the really important one. The example that I really like to use for this one is actually going to the gym, because it's something that everyone can relate to, even though it's outside of software, because it's a cycle that happens a lot. The trigger, for instance, is it's January, it's a New Year's resolution, I'm going to get fit and go to the gym. That's the decision made, and you've envisaged your end goal at that point of what you want to achieve. It's a more physically fit version of yourself, for instance. And then your first actions may be going out, getting the equipment ready for it, and then obviously going to the gym. And with the gym, the reward is where it falls down a lot, because you don't see the impact of your work as quickly as you may have liked to at the gym. And this is why a lot of people drop out, which is why it shows how important it is, the model. But really what you want to be seeing at the gym is starting to look different, starting to feel different as well. And if you're not feeling that, that's what makes you drop out. But it also, if you do manage to persevere, the investment with that is that once you've started to develop yourself, it's then hard to stop, because you know full well that it's something that if you don't keep it up, it'll start diminishing, and it's just trying to do that. With games, obviously I am a gamer, so I do see a lot of this one. So for instance, it comes down to the like a sort of the software as a service, as I'd call it, the games that are designed to be played forever, like your loot 'em ups. Back in the day, the way that you do it was with a sunk cost, so it was more involved around the investment. So larger games like the subscription models, World of Warcraft, I remember Star Wars: The Old Republic as well. I don't mean to sort of name drop games here, so I apologise. But it was an investment. You played it because you'd sunk money up front to be able to play the game. Obviously, the game itself was good quality and it fed back into there. But we've seen the move going towards more of the reward-based, your loot crates, your fear of missing out, your FOMOs, your seasonal and periodical rewards, these things that keep people coming back to do the same things in the same cycles, despite the fact that they're not doing anything different a lot of the time. It's just rinse and repeat of the same products, but they're trying to invest more in it, try and get more out because they have these time-limited rewards. And again, it ties into the investment side of things because you'll have your accounts, your own profiles, everything that you unlock is added to them, which means it's harder and harder to resist. You don't want to start again because you've sunk so much time into it. It's very, very clever. I do want to touch a little bit more on the casino side of things from where I worked. Is the company that we did work for is United States based, and it is actually, you're not allowed to gamble online in the United States. So everything was done, despite being casino games, for free. Well, they're like token based. It was all free. There was no money transactions. The investment they had there was a community that developed. So you had a sort of a social side that brought people back to it. So you had this community of players that grew up with the game from like the 90s when it first became big, and stuck with it because of the community side of things. Obviously, newer versions of the game came out, probably better looking ones as well, but the community was very dedicated to sticking together because they developed this social community around it, which was another sort of unintentional hook that they had just by enabling chat, which I thought was really, really interesting.
Yeah, and I think there is sort of a controversy around this model as well of how this model is now being implemented on Facebook and Instagram. So what is your opinion on this?
So yeah, the hook model is a psychological model at the end of the day. It's designed to be manipulative, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. It depends how people use it. So I've seen people talk about it in relation to like the Facebook feed, for instance, that your triggers and your actions are actually scrolling down. And that you're doing this because you want some social interaction, and the reward is seeing what happens. But if people get a positive experience from it, I don't necessarily see anything wrong with it. It's when there's a guilt side of things. I remember the old, this is probably, I'm not sure if it's an actually relevant example, but there was a Harry Potter game where you ran out of tokens just at the point where you had to save a child's life in one of these mobile games that came out. That's when it's done manipulatively, and that's when it becomes a problem. So again, it just comes down to the ethics of the people creating it. The model it's as old as time, it's just been given a name now. We're trying to get people to come back and do something again. It's not going away, nor has it ever probably appeared. It's always been there. So again, it just comes down to the morals of the users at the end of the day.
Of course.
Creators,
And
sorry.
Yeah, and it's and it's actually very effective, this model itself. So the next question is like, so how do you define a product success?
Okay. First of all, a product is only going to be successful if people are using it. It doesn't matter what the product is. If no one uses it, then it's definitely a failure. Obviously, the number of users depends entirely on what the products or services that you're trying to do. But for me, I kind of have there's 4 rules. So yeah, first of all, are people using the product? Is the product achieving the primary goal as well as it's been set out for the users to do? Does the product achieve the company's business goal who's created it? Are they getting what they wanted out of it? And then lastly as well is, does it provide a return on investment for the company? I think it's a trap that a lot of designers can fall into, where you can get carried away designing for the user. Obviously, perfect, you need to do that. But if you forget the business goals as well, you can end up creating something that works perfectly for the user but doesn't meet the business need, and then it's a product failure regardless of how good it is. So ticking those 4 boxes, I think, is the most important part to making sure your product's a success, really.
Perfect. So that checklist
Format was actually very helpful. So thank you for that. So the final question, and I think the most essential one here, is that what methods do you use to get the info you need to make design decisions? So
Okay.
what is essentially your design process of user research?
So, yeah, is you need to be talking to the clients as well to make sure you're doing the actual user experience side of things. Sorry, the customers. So I'll start that one again. You need to be talking to the customers first of all, because they're the ones who are using the product and know exactly what it is that they want to get out of it. You need to be talking to the clients as well, making sure that you know exactly what it is that they want to. So if you've done that correctly, you should have two sets of goals, the user and the client goals. And the real method there is to make sure that the goals of the users match the business needs and coming up with a solution around that. So depending on the project that you've got, you don't always have to do a full redesign to create a good user experience. In fact, I'd say it's often better to focus on individual journeys first of all, work out where the main wins are, the quick wins, go from there and build into something that provides a better experience in layers rather than trying to do a full overhaul. You can find that if you change too much too often, you can accidentally create a negative experience even with the best intentions. So I would always try and find out where the main pain points are for the users. So a great place to look if you have access to them is obviously like like Trustpilot review systems that customers may have. If they have a list of users that they have a mailing list, for instance, that people contact to speak to them, just try and work out what it is that people like and don't like about the product, and then work out where your pressing needs are from there. Create a list of priorities and tackle them one by one, measure them as you go, and then you know exactly where the point reaches where you're going to get a diminishing returns and that you need to rethink and refocus about where you need to be.
So that ends the questions which I have, and to wrap this episode up. So this is my final question. So the people who are like interested in this product design and product management industry. So what are some of the best things they can do right now, just starting out, which would really help them accelerate in their journey to this in this industry?
Yeah, okay. I'll touch on two things then in this case, because a lot of the time that I worked in my last role, I was involved with recruiting developers, so I've got more experience from that side than it is selling myself. But for us, the most important thing was enthusiasm, first of all, that if someone has gone out and made the effort to, say, self-teach themselves, a lot of developers who self-taught themselves, they're doing it because they love doing it. And that comes across in their work as well. They're often very passionate about it because a lot of the time they're doing it in their free time just to make sure they're doing something that's development-wise. And I know it works the same with designers as well. As we grew, we identified that more formal training is also good as well because it creates better practices. You get the standards. I know that I have a weakness that being mainly self-taught on the design side of things, that I get some of the terminology wrong, which is something I've looked into improving, and which is why I've done a lot of UX specific training myself over the summer as well. On the design side of things, it's still about having a portfolio. It's, whether rightly or wrong, being able to showcase your work is the way that you get into a job. It's good in a way because it probably makes getting those interviews easier if you've got a strong portfolio, but the challenge, of course, is getting the portfolio in the first place. My advice there would be, if you can't think of anything, to redesign an existing product. It's a great way of just getting your head around the way things should work, find things that you don't like about something. And you can do that on your own. If you can speak to people as well and do some research yourself, that always goes well too, because it will all feed into a case study that you can do as well. It also, it gives you a chance to use the tools as well. So if you're using, say, Sketch or Figma or XD, for instance, you can play around and learn those as well as you go. And anything that you can showcase that you've done with, say, a prototype that you've created as well is only going to help you. And you'll get better and better the more that you do it. If you want something that's a bit more hands-on, I'd say contact local businesses, things like that, something that you can actually do a project for, even if it's free, even though I know we really want to try and avoid doing that as a community, but it helps get you out there, and it also gives you a chance to get real world examples into your portfolio, because obviously you can see the results of your changes. If you've done the work and you can see positive changes after it, that's going to look really well on your portfolio as well. And then lastly, don't give up. It's it's a hard industry to get into at the moment. Obviously, it's unusual times with what's going on in the world, but it will get brighter, and design is here for the good of the world, and I'm a really strong believer in that. So don't give up on it. The more you practice and the more you can expose yourself to doing design, whether it's for personal gain or just to help other people, is going to make you a better designer. So keep at it, and yeah, don't give up, and you'll get there.
Perfect. So so at the end of this, so I actually want you to tell us about UXDS, which you host monthly, and actually that is where we first met. So tell us about that. The philosophy behind it.
So, thanks, Joseph. Unintentional plug. Unexpected, sorry. Yeah, so UXDS was a design community that was originally based around Manchester. I had every intention of it being something that would be a physical meetup when the lockdown restrictions ended. It's morphed into something slightly different now. I'm not sure where it will end up, but the idea was to create an environment for peer review. It was based on the idea that people would come with their problems and solutions. Their problems it would be used to create the agenda, and then people can share their issues, the good, the bad, the ugly, with each other. And as a community, we can review, help, and support each other, and come up with solutions for their problems together. Very sort of conversational and convivial meetup group, small groups as well. It's just designed to help people talk to each other and stay in contact and learn and grow from each other together.
Perfect. And I can actually vouch for this because I have been a part of 2 of the meetups, and they're absolutely amazing. So I think this actually concludes our episode. Thank you, James, for taking out the time and for this insightful talk. So definitely a pleasure to have you.
Not a problem. Absolute pleasure to be here as well, Shazam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. So that was James Marshall, and I truly hope that you enjoyed this talk as much as I did. And definitely he is a gentleman, and again, very insightful talk. And do check out UXDS on meetup.com. He hosts monthly meetups on online virtual due to this pandemic. Very amazing session and amazing discussion there. I linked the link in the description, so do check it out. And again, very long video, but very insightful. Do give it a hear, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.